So I'm definitely a few days behind on this piece of news, but I still thought it was pretty important to talk about. I find it really interesting, and I think a lot of you guys do too, because people have been all over the place with this news. So we all know that a couple of days ago, this is now a week or so before E3 actually happens, Sony came out and confirmed that the PlayStation 4 Neo is actually a real thing. So this, of course, is both surprising and unsurprising. There have been so many rumors about this. I discussed on my few videos on the topic how, for me, once it actually made it to like a front page video news story on IGN, there was a lot of validity potentially behind it. So we were all pretty much treating it like fact, even though it had yet to be officially confirmed, which I also maintained on most of my videos. But now here we are, and Sony comes out and says, hey, this thing is actually real. It's an upgraded, slightly different version from the PlayStation 4. They said some of the typical things that I actually like, and I was hoping that they would confirm that it's not necessarily a gigantic difference from what the current PlayStation 4 model is, and that they plan to have these two models sit alongside of each other all the way to the end of the life cycle. Easily my favorite thing that was said by Sony, I believe it was Andrew House. I don't have the article in front of me and I didn't research. I'm pretty sure he was the one actually talking about this, but regardless of who it was, I love the fact that they at least said, hey, this thing is meant to last all the way to the end of the life cycle. You'll be able to buy both versions of the PlayStation 4. We're not trying to completely replace the current one. And to me, the reason that's actually good news, you guys, is that says that they're not going to be making this new PlayStation so vastly different to the current one, which means it's not going to, at least to a large degree, completely alienate the different gamers on one version of the PlayStation 4 compared to the other version of the PlayStation 4. And, you know, they're playing it smart. They're going the Nintendo route, the way the 3DS and new 3DS are, where other than like Xenoblade Chronicles on the 3DS, there's really not that much of a performance difference that's separating your libraries between those two machines. And I think, based on what they've said so far about the PlayStation 4 Neo, it sounds like that's ultimately going to be the same thing, where they're not going to be really trying to say, these PS4 owners can only play these lame experiences, but these special PlayStation 4 owners with their special PlayStation 4s, they get the super cool experience, and they can do all these things that the other guys can't. It sounds like it's going to be the same experience across the board, the same features and gameplay available, but you're going to maybe get slightly better performance, and I think they confirmed that it's going to output 4K resolution or 4K streaming, depending on what you're doing for games or video streaming or whatever, and it's like, okay, if that's the biggest difference to me, I super don't care. The only thing I would want out of a newer model of a PlayStation 4, quick aside I want to mention here, is just a smoother, more comfortable and quieter I don't know, running experience. I don't know how to say it. Basically, what I'm talking about is, again, I have all three consoles. I have a Wii U, an Xbox One, and a PlayStation 4. I love them all, but I got to tell you, with the PlayStation 4, you guys, this is my second PlayStation 4. I had the Destiny white launch one, and I traded that one in for the Star Wars Battlefront bundle one, like I don't know, last November. You guys, I made a video about it. So both of my PlayStation 4s had this, so I know it wasn't just like my old one was crappy and this one's better. They both had this problem where whenever you put a disc in or take a disc out of your PlayStation 4, it's so loud and awkward and uncomfortable, and it just feels and sounds like the system is struggling to do so. I mean, my Wii U and my Xbox One, the way they both accept, eject, and play discs as you're playing a game or putting games in and out, it's so smooth and quiet, and just the experience of the machine accepting the disc from your hand and then spitting it out, it's so smooth. It's buttery smooth. The PlayStation 4 sounds like a Mack truck being run through a garbage disposal. I just feel like it's struggling to take this little disc and then actually run it as you're playing a game. It just feels like the system is always sweating at all times. Like, I love it. The games are great. I love the system, the OS, the controller, all these things. So I'm not actually like against the PlayStation 4, but I have to bring that up. I hate how chunky and loud and just awkward, and it just makes me feel uncomfortable. I feel like I'm breaking my PlayStation every time I put a disc in or out. Any PS4 owners out there should tell me if you can share that same experience. But anyway, that's a tangent. The reason I brought that up is that would be one of the few things I would really want out of a newer model PlayStation 4. Maybe if they improve that disc drive and the operating performance, not as far as the game you're actually playing, but just how the system, how much it has to struggle or not struggle just to run your game or your movie or whatever. It's just insane how bad it is, and I really want them to fix that. So Anyway, that was a big long tangent about my personal PS4 experience. The point is, they mentioned some of the right things about the PlayStation 4 Neo, and I'm really excited that it seems like business model wise and business sense wise, they're probably doing a couple of the things that make this ultimately more okay. Now, the thing is, we don't really know all the details. These are just some blanket base PR statements that were stated by Nintendo. I'm so used to talking about Nintendo. By Sony, and again, I think Andrew House, he was just saying the basic corporate speak, and that's fine. Fine and dandy, it sounded well enough. But we need to find out the details. And what I think is interesting is they also confirmed that the PS4 Neo is not going to be at E3 next week. And I said this on Twitter, and I'm going to maintain this here. I actually think that's a good idea and a smart move. And the reason is, there's two reasons, actually. Again, I'm on the Juices Loose podcast every Monday. Hopefully you guys are tuning into that more and more if you like podcasts and stuff. If not, that's okay. But quick plug for the podcast that I do. And when I was on it, Terminator Juice, who runs the podcast, made a really awesome point. If you were going to show the PS4 Neo, or just the idea of a slightly upgraded console on stage at an E3 conference, regardless of which company it was, if you were going to do something like that, you can't really get across on stage, and especially on the streaming video and the live feed video on YouTube and IGN and the internet, basically, to any one of us sitting at home watching it on our computers, you can't get across what that difference is. Like a 4K resolution, you're not going to be able to get that across streaming YouTube videos, and you're not going to get that. You're not going to get across. I mean, you can get across 60 frames per second, but we've all seen what that looks like. So if the frame rate's better, you can just do that. But this 1080p output and 4K resolution and all these other slight upgrades to like visual performance that aren't like actually visual upgrades, you can't showcase that on stage. So that was a huge aspect that I never thought about. So props to TJ for bringing that up and making a really, really good point on that Sony podcast we did last week. The other reason I think that it's actually good news is it shows that they're not trying to bill this as the new hot PlayStation 4 experience that everyone who maybe already has a PlayStation 4 has to go out and buy. I think that if they were to make a big stink about it at E3 and put it on stage, or even just talk about it like crazy, they're all of a sudden, even if it's only mental, they're mentally segregating and alienating those audiences, and they're pushing this PS4 Neo as something bigger than it's really supposed to be. If they just kind of release it into the wild as this slightly upgraded, moderate improvement on your current PlayStation 4 experience, but it just kind of comes out and some people get it, some people don't, whatever, then it's not really making this big impact like, oh God, you've now destroyed my current $400 PlayStation 4. What a waste of money. My experience is now the inferior one, and all these other people are going to get the better ones, and Sony has totally dicked me over. If you do it this way, where you just release it into the wild and you don't make a stink about it, it just becomes the new product that people kind of know about, then it's not going to have that effect. And I think that it's going to be less damaging to those of us who already have PlayStation 4s or people who would otherwise feel screwed over. And it also makes it feel less like the gaming industry is adopting this significant upgrade kind of strategy throughout the next console cycles, where, hey, you never know if whenever you buy a console, it's going to be upgraded to a better version in a year or two and make yours completely obsolete right away. That's the whole fear we have about upgrading consoles, quote unquote, in the middle of a life cycle, and why it's not a great concept. But again, for me, not bringing it to E3, not putting it on stage and not talking about it shows that they're not trying to bill it as such. And it's maybe just going to be, just a slightly better version, just like the slim versions of the PS3 and 360 before it, where it didn't outright make those previous models obsolete, and it didn't make people felt like they got screwed over with their previous purchases, other than, the Red Ring of Death on the 360. I'm so sorry, guys. It's like first thing in the morning, and probably too early for me to be talking. But anyway, I'm of course getting long in the tooth, as I tend to do. The point is, I really like them not bringing it to E3 because I think they don't blow it out of proportion. They don't make it seem like a worse idea than it potentially is, and I think people will be less angry about it. I really just want this thing to release into the wild and then just not make the huge splash. And I do know someone brought this up to me on Twitter, a couple people did, that they might be bringing it to Tokyo Game Show. They might have even confirmed that somewhere. And it's like, at this point, that's probably a better idea than doing it at E3. Tokyo Game Show is huge. Yes, it gets a lot of attention, but it doesn't have the same impact as bringing something to E3, I think. Also, Tokyo Game Show, I believe, is in October, if I'm not mistaken. And that's much closer to the holiday when we assume this thing is probably going to release. So maybe it's just a better PR marketing stunt for Sony to show it off, you know, the month before it actually ends up launching and releasing to the world. And again, they don't pump it as this whole new thing that makes your previous PS4 obsolete. And I think overall that's good. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts on the PlayStation 4 Neo. And it's actually surprisingly mostly good stuff. You know, I still think we're treading weird territory here with this. And if Microsoft and the Xbox come out and confirm that they're doing something similar, combined with Nintendo releasing a brand new next generation console so soon after the Wii U comes out, there's definitely a lot of weird things going on. And this generation proves to be more awkward, as I said on my Facebook feed. You know, this is a very awkward, uncomfortable kind of generation. Despite some great games and some really good consoles, there's just some weird shit going on. And this is just furthering that whole example. So, you know, the other thing that I wanted to talk about is a more positive thing, I think, and that is that I really wanted to quickly mention that Kirby Planet Robobot is freaking awesome. I'm playing that game. It just came out this last Friday. I've only been able to play through probably about 3 levels so far. Seems like it's going to be a typical large Nintendo platformer kind of thing where you've got a bunch of different worlds, and within each world is a bunch of different smaller levels you play through, just like in Donkey Kong Country or like the new Super Mario Brothers or Yoshi's Woolly World. And I love that there's a Kirby game doing this same model and that it's on the 3DS. And I haven't played a Kirby game in a very long time, you guys, so maybe the previous ones have done this as well. I mean, the last Kirby games I played were Epic Yarn and Rainbow Curse, and I love both of those games, but they're different in the sense that they're, you know, the console games, and Kirby, after the first couple on the old NES, they really became, you know, Game Boy and DS and 3DS games. And for the most part, not entirely, but for the most part. And I know that that's where it's thrived and people have really loved them. And I never got to play those previous handheld ones. So maybe they did the same thing. But as far as just my experience with Planet Robobot so far, so great. This gimmick, I don't want to call it a gimmick, but this gameplay structure, this style of adding the robot mech suits that you get in and out, and each mech suit has different abilities based on different enemies you scan, and it's like taking the same idea of Kirby sucking up an enemy and then turning into that enemy and being able to use his moves. It takes that idea and it turns it into this robot mechanized form where all of a sudden you scan like an enemy and now your big mech can do the same kind of moves and attacks based on the enemy you just scanned. And it's like, it's so brilliant. Now the levels are very simple early on, so I'm hoping that they get more and more complicated the way Yoshi Woolly World started off really simple and easy, too easy honestly, but then the creativity and the difficulty started to come in and it made that game fantastic. I assume we're going to get the same thing with Kirby. You know, some of you guys play through games so fast, you might have even already beaten Kirby in just 2 or 3 days. It's going to take me a couple of weeks because I play games slowly, I play a lot of games, and I'm busy outside of gaming, so it takes me a while to go through things. All I wanted to say is Kirby is awesome so far. It's exactly what I wanted. I love having a reason to play a game like this on my 3DS. I miss having new games to play on my 3DS. 100% without a doubt, once I complete Kirby, I'm picking up Fire Emblem because I'm a horrible slacker for not having played that right away. We're coming into gaming drought season, you know, having just gone through Uncharted and Doom and Star Fox a couple of weeks before it. Once I have this done, it's like I'm going to go back to my backlog and I'm going to go through Fire Emblem. That's probably my first priority. But I did want to give Kirby a shout out, and I wanted to hear you guys tell me if you're playing Kirby and what you think. I also want to hear you talk about the PlayStation 4 Neo. What do you think about the confirmation that it's real? What do you think about the fact that they're not bringing it to E3? Do you agree with me that it's probably for the best, or do you think it really doesn't make an impact either way? Do you think the PS4 Neo sounds fine and not a big deal? Do you think it's actually a really asshole kind of move by Sony? Are you playing Kirby? Do you think it's as awesome as I do? Do you think it's typical clever Nintendo platforming? Have you not had a chance to try it? Do you like the robots? Do you not? Couple of things to talk about. So yeah, that's pretty much what's going on. Share your thoughts about all this stuff below, guys. Thanks, of course, for tuning into this random quick video. Not quick. What am I talking about quick? Do I ever make quick videos? Of course not. So anyway, thanks for tuning into this long video, and this is Rob of World 2 Review. I'll catch you guys next time on another video.